when this other question came up, it really took me out of myself, or shall I say out of just being in that moment, and opened my eyes to see the big picture and really helped me to see, wow, like you do a lot, you are amazing, you are really good enough, like for real, for real. Hello and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. Each week, my guest and I share our vulnerable behind-the-scenes stories of giving ourselves permission to take off our masks, let go of expectations, and embrace our own path of freedom and authentic connection. I am your host, Bianca Hughes, a lover of authenticity. Hello and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. It is your host, Bianca Hughes. Welcome, welcome. This is episode 57 of the podcast, and it is me on the podcast today. I want to talk about something that we all experience. And I mean, when I say all, I mean every single human being. And I don't think it's something that will ever go away, but we can definitely learn to recognize it and manage it. And so there is this thing about I'll never be good enough, or will I ever be good enough? And it's that constant drive when we're constantly trying, we reach our goals and then we're on to the next, and we're comparing ourselves when we're looking to the left, to the right, and we achieve something and then we look up and see what someone else has achieved. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not there yet. And so it's kind of having that sense of, will I ever be okay? Will people ever want me, ever love me? Will I ever be wanted, be seen, and all those sorts of things? So the thing about the fear of never being good enough, or asking that ourselves that question, will I ever be good enough, is it's so sneaky. Like it's really, really sneaky, and it just comes up in so many different ways. And like I said at the beginning, we are human, and so it's going to come up, it's going to creep in, as we're on this journey, we're living life authentically, we're just enjoying ourselves, loving ourselves, and then we realize that we start worrying and am I good enough? Am I doing okay? We all experience that. And so I just want you to let you know that's okay if you experience it. It's just when we allow it to rule our lives that it really becomes a problem. So different ways it can creep in is, I'm sure a lot of you will know this, is social media scrolling. Looking at other people's lives. We have to remember it's a clip, and we're sitting at home and they're out somewhere and they're taking a picture when we're traveling. Of course, we're going to feel like we're not doing enough or not good enough, right? That's just what happens. That just ties into that comparison, right? So we reach a goal. For example, we reach a goal of getting our degree, and then we see someone else in the picture and they're getting their master's degree, right? And you just got your bachelor's. That's where comparison comes in. Oh, you bought a house, but then this person bought a house with more bedrooms, or, you achieved this goal, but then this person made twice as much money, in their goal. So there's so many different ways that we can compare. I'm sure most of you have heard that quote, that comparison is the thief of joy, and it really, really is. But ultimately, it's the thief of us not feeling like we can ever reach this state of being good enough. Another way that it creeps in is when we're not reaching our goals according to a certain time. Well, I thought I would have this in a year or 2 years or a certain age, right? Especially for women, we'll be married at this age, have kids at this age. For men, I thought I would be successful by this age, have my car and have this title in my job, or have, this goal in my business, right? So all these different time limits on our goals, or age limits on our goals, and then we look at someone else doing it, and that's another way where that sense of, am I good enough because I can't reach these goals at this certain time or this certain age really, really creeps in. Another way that the sense of not feeling good enough creeps in is critical words from other people. When we're talked down to, when we're shamed, oh, you can't make it, you'll never be good enough. Well, we probably told that. Or look what so-and-so's doing. Why can't you do better? When people are like picking at us, well, you made an A, 5 A's and a B, what happened to the B, right? So we're always like, oh my gosh, why can't I ever just reach this 100%? Remember, that's all about that perfectionism, and perfection does not exist. And so that's different ways that sense of never feeling good enough really comes in. It's a lot about achievement. Racism, sexism, that's another way, right? When we're picked on or we're pointed at because of the color of our skin or because of our gender, it's like, but those things I can't change. So that really can make us feel like we're never good enough or never be good enough. I just want to speak to, what do I do when that creeps in? How do I kind of manage that? So one of the things I know that's really important, and I know I do this, is what are you believing? Because what we believe is often linked to how we act and the things we do and what we think that we're capable of, and linked back to identity. What I mean by that is, what does it mean to be good enough? Like, how do you define that? I'm going to tell you how I define it at the end. So what does that mean to you? And then once you can identify that, where did that definition come from? Does that definition sit well with you? And what I mean, what do I mean? What did that definition come from? Did it come from society? And I always say to this to people, if it came from society, well, who's society? Who's the people who made that? And the people that made that, do you value their opinion? And if you don't, why are you making that the thing that decides if you're good enough? So that's why, again, what are we believing? What are we believing that makes us good enough? Who are we believing that makes us good enough? Where can we take back that sense of power and confidence in knowing our own definition of what makes us good enough? Another example I just mentioned is like about women. I know often there are some women who don't feel like they're good enough because they're not married, or they can't have kids, or they're not woman enough, So I really want you to sit down, write down, and challenge that about what does it mean to be good enough, and who defines that, and if what they're saying in their opinion is truth. Another thing I want you to think about is, what really stops you from being good enough? Is it because you look to the left or the right after you reach a goal and feel like that's enough? Is that an internal discomfort? Is that because you reached this goal and the feelings that you thought were going to happen didn't actually happen? So that now means you're not good enough? Like, what are those things that stop you believing you're good enough? Because no one gave you a compliment? Like, what is it? Because once we can identify those things that make us feel like we're not good enough or question them, then we can challenge them. So, for example, I would give you an example about myself. So for me, well, I'll just share something that happened. The other day I was doing this 21-day abundance, and one of the questions, well, I'm still doing it. One of the questions is, what are the things that you feel like you have postponed in your life? And as I sat and I pondered on this question throughout the day, and I realized that nothing in my life have I postponed. Everything I've ever wanted, I've achieved. And it really made me sit and think how much I have, how grateful I am, how amazing I am, how determined I am. And so it gave me this sense of boost, right? Because for me, I was looking at it from a standpoint of, well, maybe I haven't achieved this, or I haven't, like, in a sense, like, paid off all my debt, right? So I can feel like I'm not good enough. I haven't perhaps been able to, I'm constantly writing this journal. I haven't finished this journal book that I'm writing, this guided journal book I'm writing on perfectionism, and I haven't finished that, so I don't feel good enough, right? But when this other question came up, it really took me out of myself, or shall I say out of just being in that moment, and opened my eyes to see the big picture, and really helped me to see, wow, like, you do a lot, you are amazing, you are really good enough, like, for real. And just being able to say, you know what, I haven't postponed anything in my life, and that's a blessing, because for some people we do through circumstances and situations or fear, whatever the case may be, but that hasn't happened. And I'm so grateful. So that kind of helped me really change my stance of like, what does it mean to be good enough? Like if I step back and look at the whole big picture, I can really see it. So I hope that really kind of helps with that question a bit more. Another question I want you to think about is, what makes you good enough? Like, as you're listening to this, what can you identify that makes you good enough? And like I told you, I promise I'm going to answer this question to make you guys think. But I want you to answer that question, and I want you to own that, and I want you to stand in that, and I want you to stand in the discomfort of that, because it's not going to feel comfortable when we really begin to own that. It's kind of like, sometimes you put on a new coat and you have to kind of like make it fit right and feel good. But like once we're in it, we own it. And it's the same thing with feeling good enough or knowing that we're good enough. We have to make that decision to own that. I've talked a couple about these things, is what does it mean to be good enough? Who defines that? And what makes you good enough in this moment? And I want you guys to think about this. This is the ultimate standard that I say. And this is what I say. Someone else may say something different. I'm good enough because I'm human. You're good enough because you're human. I'm going to say that again. You are good enough because you're human. That is the standard. That is where it starts from. And so we can get anything we get on top of that is extra. I know for me personally, I'm good enough because I'm human. I'm a child of God, and I'm aware of that, and I'm created for a purpose. I'm created by the great creator of this world, of this universe. And I just sometimes sit in that and own that and wear that. And so when that fear of will I ever be good enough, when the comparison creeps in, when the scrolling on social media comes in, I go back to that simplest thing, because sometimes it could be so hard to identify all those things that make us good enough. And I simply just go back, I'm human. And because I'm human, I'm good enough. And because I'm human, I'm going to question whether I'm good enough. And that's okay. But ultimately, I'm good enough because I'm human. Ultimately, you're good enough because you're human. So thank you so much for listening. Please tag a friend, share with a friend on the podcast, on the social media, or however you like to share, and tell us what you think. And don't forget to leave us a review on your podcast platform. If you connected with what you just heard, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can stay connected by following the Instagram Bianca Keisha, spelled Keisha, Kesha, or visiting the website authenticwednesday.com. Remember, authenticity is a journey, not a destination.